Hello everybody, this is Dylloop and welcome back to another Factorio Combinator tutorial. Today we're going to be covering a more advanced train unload technique. This technique was made by Rain. He came up with this. I'll link a video in the description. He uses it in his Megabase and displays it in his Megabase tour. He does not really show the combinators so much as how more of the infrastructure of the trains themselves. So I want to kind of explain the way that I handled the combinators in my Let's Play. So what it does is it's got two stations. One is like the pre-station and then one is the actual unload station. And then you have your stacker. The train will not go into the train station unless it's open. So you would disable these pre-stations if you don't want them to go in, and then it would path in to the station. Another note here is you do have to have a secondary station, and it could just be pretty much anywhere. We could just throw it here for the time being. And this would be the pre-station, and we put that like so, and then you have your signals, your rail signals like this, and then I normally just tie them together, and I'll make them output nothing, and then close signal if 0 equals 0, which means it'll always be closed. So no trains will actually path in here. Now this will be called the same as your unload stations or your unload pre-stations. So if every single one of these is disabled, it will never actually path down here. And then we would want a chain signal here. So the trains would never actually path down this path. Okay, so basically what this station will do is it will disable the train station under two conditions. It will disable it if 1, there's a train currently unloading there or pathing to it. 2, if it is full beyond a certain amount. Okay, so when it determines whether it's full beyond a certain amount, it will take the average of all the stations that you have, and it will take whether or not it can fit more than 75% of a train. That's how I have mine set up. So you can adjust this as you please, and there are probably multiple ways to handle this, and I'm not the best at combinators, so there may be even a cleaner way to handle it than the way I handle it. So what we want to do is first I'm going to set up a constant combinator here. This constant combinator will just kind of be the display for the station. So this is like emulating a chest. This is for testing purposes only. And then it will output onto this line here. And then what I'm going to have, you know what, I'm going to back that up a little bit. What I'm going to have is I'm going to have an arithmetic combinator that takes each signal. So it evaluates every condition on all input signals. I'm going to plus 0, and then I'm going to output like an item, you know. So, what? Okay, so I don't want to use I because we're going to be using that later. I could just say, I could even give it just a signal of B. Okay, so it'll give it a signal of B. I tie this in here, and what it'll do is it'll output the amount of iron on the signal B. Pretty simple. Next, what I want to do is every station will have this combinator, and it will just be what kind of station this is. So we're going to use the iron signal. Okay, so this would be the only combinator that you will have to change throughout all of the stations as you plant them down. This combinator will just get fed on to the main line and get fed to every other station down. Okay, so after that's fed on to the main line, we then need to get an average of all the stations. We could do that fairly simply by just reading the contents of the station. So we want to grab this red wire before it ever enters this combinator, and I'm going to pull it off and add that to the main line as well. You know what, we should probably, hold up. We might want to actually parse this into an iron signal. How would I handle this? I might want to, okay, you know what? This is how I'm going to handle it. I'm going to use green wire off of this instead. And we're going to pull a separate green wire off of this combinator. Okay, so what this will do is it'll give us the two signals. One is the amount of stations, and this one is the amount of iron that we have in here. We're going to say that we have 100 iron in there. And to kind of clean it up a little bit so that you're not using a ton of wires on your chests, we'll just change this to a green wire as well. Okay, so we're still outputting B, but now we're outputting a B of 101. So we might want to, you know what, that's not going to work either. Let's keep using the red wire. However, let's grab... I'm trying to come up with a way to do it where you don't have to change each station. But I think that you would have to end up changing some of the notes. I mean, this would work. This would work because it would avoid the backfeed. You would just have to tie 2 separate wires to everything. Give me one moment here. Okay, so again, I'm building this kind of live. We're going to actually backtrack a little bit here. We're going to use the red wire for this. And then rather than feed it down the line the way that I was thinking, we are going to use a red wire to feed it down the line. And then we're going to pull the signal off of this line here. So we no longer need this green wire. Let's go ahead and clean it up. And what we will do is we'll actually add another arithmetic combinator down here. And this combinator will take the B signal, I think. Yes. So it can just take the B signal off of this, and it can plus 0 to it, and then add what resource you're reading. Okay. So what it's gonna do, you can either do it this way or run the 2 cables on all the chests. I'd rather do it this way. So what you end up with is you end up with your B signal on this red line. So actually we don't want that. We want this. So you end up with your B signal on this red line, and then when you pull it off of the red line here, we are now putting it back into an iron signal and feeding it onto the green line. And that'll keep these 2 machines completely separate. And then the only thing that you do is when you change your each station, if you wanted to change it to a copper station, you would change this to, you would change it to a copper plate, and then you would change this to like copper there, so then now this is a copper station essentially. So we're going to keep it as iron for these tests, but that is kind of the reason that I was thinking of that. So what this will allow us to do is now get an average of every station. So where we can put this is I want to actually come down here, and this is going to emulate the control center of your base, like any kind of common area, and have some of your common circuits that you're going to use. So I have this power pull here for us, and we are going to feed in and do some math on all these signals. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take the iron signal and we're going to multiply it by 100. I'm sorry, we're not quite there yet. Okay, so this is getting the total amount. No, we are. Okay, we would actually need to, so what we're trying to do is just get the average. So we take the iron signal and we divide it by iron plate, and then we output, we would need to output an average of iron. So what I will do is output the, I guess we could just do I. Okay. And then we'd have another arithmetic combinator, and this one would be copper. Okay. And this will output C. So these will output our averages for everything. These get tied in like so. And then they can get output onto the red line as well. So we can just do that. Okay, this gets tied in to our, over here. Once that's tied in, you know what, we will need to bring the green line over because that's where we're getting the signal from. So these actually take their inputs not from red, but from green. So let's remove this, that, tie this in here, and then we will take our green signal, and it gets our inputs from green. We could technically output it on the green as well and keep it kind of cleaner. You know what? I apologize, guys. Let me go ahead and switch all this over real quick. I'm going to just change this to the green line because there's no reason to have it on a separate line. Okay, so what we now have is everything just getting fed onto the green line, and we have our I signal and we have our iron signal. So it should be fairly easy to just copy this. Let me copy it from like here. And if I paste it over here, it should all work. We're getting 1 and we're getting 100. And we should see that we still have an I signal of 100 because that's the average. And then if we bump this up to, say, 1,000, we should get a different average of 550. So that is our average. And then if we were to, say, switch this over to a copper station instead of an iron station, we now get a signal of an average of 1,000 copper and 100 iron. Okay, fairly simple. I think I like it. All right. So that is our average machine. Let's go ahead and come back over here. We're going to leave that one. We're going to come back over here, and we're going to now use that average number in our build. So what I want to do is I actually want to take this output here and kind of, we want to do the same thing. We want to pull that signal off of the line and use it only in this build so that we're not actually affecting the signal, and we don't have to change a lot per station. Okay, so we're going to include all of that stuff on this so that everything you change per station is going to be here. So we're going to put a decider combinator, and we're going to take that I signal, and we're going to plus it by 0, and we're going to switch it into A. Okay, so you would basically change I to C, you would change this, and you would change this. You would change the 3 signals on whether this is a copper station or an iron station or a stone station or an oil station. It doesn't matter what kind of station it is. The only thing that you will change is these numbers here. And then everything else can stay the same on every single station. Okay, so we're going to need to just pull that I number off. We're going to pull it off here. Okay, and then we're going to get our red signal off. Gotcha. We actually don't need this or this. No, we did not. Maybe we did. We could have pulled. Okay, we can pull it from here. Clean it up a little bit. Okay, I'm just cleaning up cables. Okay. So that now is giving us the input of our A, which is our average. We are also getting a signal of B, which is our current number of resources in this particular station. So how do we utilize those to our advantage? Well, what we can do is we can set our, figure out how many trains can actually fit into this station. We're not going to use the average for that, but we're going to use our B number for that. So we will get an arithmetic combinator. Okay. This arithmetic combinator will take our B signal and it will multiply it by 100. No, I'm sorry. It's going to take a constant, and this is going to be how much your station holds. So you would change this based off of if you have a 141 with 2 chests per wagon, it would be so much numbers. It's basically the total of all your chests. So we're going to take 500 and we're going to subtract B from it, and we're going to output another number. And we can just call this D, or we'll use E, okay? E for empty. This will read our empty amount in our station. So right now we have 500, we minus B, and we get our E signal. So we just need to read B from it. We should be outputting an E of 400 because our station is set to hold 500. And then this E signal we can utilize to figure out how many trains this will actually hold. Okay, so to change how many trains this will actually hold, we just need to now multiply this value by 100. Okay, so we're going to do this. We're going to feed this into the output, and we're going to just take E, and we're going to times it by 100. You know what? This is the only place we're using B. I could just output B again. So you just keep B as an output, and it'll just do all the math on it real quick. So we're going to times B by 100 and output B one more time. So what this will give us is 40,000. And then finally, we get another arithmetic combinator. I need a power pole here. Let me grab a substation because that way we're powering everything and it's not in the way. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we now have the signal of B, and we just need to take B, and we need to divide it by the size of a train. Okay, so imagine that a train holds 200 resources. No, let's say a train holds 100 resources. Okay, and we divide it by the train size, and we output, we could do T. Okay, so that's the number of trains that can fit in here. So we feed in the this one here, and it should output a T of 400. That is 4 trains. And it is in a decimal notation. So the reason we times it by 100 is to basically get the decimals for it, because Factorio does not support decimals. It doesn't support floating point numbers in your combinators. So this is 4 trains. If we were to up this number and say that we have 150 in here, we now have a signal of 350. That's 3.5 trains. If we use an odd number and say we have 112 in here, we now get 388 trains. That is 3.88 trains that can fit in here. Okay? So now we know the number of trains we can fit in here. We know our averages. We're doing pretty good. Okay. So our next step is to just kind of compare this and figure out if we want to send a train or not. So I'm going to use a decider combinator, and I'm going to put 2 of them down. And one is going to check if T is greater than 0.75. Okay, so we're just going to do greater than 75. So if 75% of a train can fit in this station, then you're going to output a green 1. Okay, and then this one, we're going to say if the B signal, and B shouldn't have been changed. Yes. So if B is greater than, or sorry, less than the average, then you're going to output a green 1. Okay? And then finally, we're going to take an arithmetic combinator. Let's flip these around. We're going to take an arithmetic combinator. We're going to set it to the AND. And we're going to put green, green. Output green. Okay? So I think this should work. We'll check right now. I might need to have 2 separate signals for this, like a green and a red. But this might work. So what we're going to do is we're going to we just need this A and B signal. So we can tie the ends of these 2 together and tie them to the power pole. Then we tie the ends of these 2 together and tie them into the arithmetic combinator. Right now, T is greater than 75 because we should be requesting a T there. Oops. You know what? I need to also tie in this to this as well. So T needs to be tied in as well. So right now we're outputting a green here, but not here, because T is not, or B is not less than A, because right now we have no other averages, because this is set to copper. So if we change this to copper real quick, we can kind of raise the average on it really high to test. So now we should be getting a green output of 2. Okay? So we get a green output of 2. That will work. I mean, not really, but what I could do is instead, let's say that instead of green, we'll do, we could do 1, or blue. We'll do blue and green. One outputs blue, one outputs green, and then we just change one of these to blue, and we get the green signal. You know what? We get an S. We'll set it with S. Yep, so now we're getting an S signal. Okay? So this is where the SR latch comes into play. Because now we need to, this is going to be our parameters that set the RS latch. So we need an arithmetic combinator, or I'm sorry, a decider combinator, and this is going to go here. This decider combinator is going to take this S signal in. It's going to take a green wire and loop it on itself. And this is going to say S is greater than R. It will output a S on the 1, a 1S, okay? Next, we're going to take this and tie it into the train stop. And this is going to click enable disable, and it's only going to enable if S is greater than 0. Okay? So now S is 1, so this should be enabled, but we do want a way to reset this. So to reset this, we are just going to say that this signal here is going to tie in to this train stop. This signal is going to output, you know what, I'm sorry, I'm missing a step. Let me pull that back. We're going to need an arithmetic combinator because I did go over the fact that we would need to multiply the signal by 2. We're kind of running out of space here. I've kind of backed myself into a corner. Let me copy this. I'm sorry, let me cut it and move it back to here. Just move it back to here. Which means we will need to tie it all in again, but that's fine. Oops. Okay, that should be working correctly again. Yes. Except we're not getting power. Another substation. There is probably cleaner ways to do this. Okay, so we're getting our average now, and it's outputting onto the red lines. We get our average. Yep, that's working. Okay, so to reset this, we need to take an arithmetic combinator here. And this just needs to take the input of R, and it needs to multiply it by 2. And then it needs to output R again as the 2 signal. And then we tie our signal into here. We tie this into our reset. And then here, we say that if this signal is either red or yellow, to output an R signal. Okay, so now we have the signal disabled because the signal is red, because this train is here. Okay, so now if this train were to pull out, it would re-enable the station. Okay, let's check it. We have the station is now re-enabled. Once the train comes back in, the station disables again. Okay, so this is pretty much all of our logic. Like, we're just about done with the logic on this train stop. Again, there's probably easier ways to do this. Because right now, again, you're gonna have to change this I and B and this, but this is the way that I handled it personally, and it may be a bit convoluted. So let's go ahead and copy this whole thing. First off, let's actually destroy all of this. And the reason I want to destroy it is because when I copy this over, I want to make sure that every piece of it gets put in correctly. Okay, so that would be our train stop. And then the only thing that you have to do is tie them into the main line. So right now, we now have an average of 200. Let's say that this train is full. Or no, let's say that each stop has 100 ore in it, okay? And we're going to say, for this unload here, I'm actually going to give it a big wait time. Or we should just, I'm going to do that. Okay? So right now we have an average of 100, because that one is what, full? No, that's 100. This is 100. Why do we have an average of 100? We should have an average of 50, right? No, it would be an average of 100. Okay, let's go ahead and demonstrate how this works. Right now this train stop's disabled because this train is waiting here. Let's go ahead and fix that. Let's pull it into the stacker. This is where all of our trains will be waiting. Okay, I'm just going to pull it there. We're going to copy these to here. Both of these trains are the same train, except for this one is blue. Alright, and we're just going to go ahead and set them to run. So right now this train can't path anywhere, because it can't go to this unload station, because it is not lower than the average. But this train just pulled in, so it's going to be raising our amount up. It's going to unload its contents and raise this station up to 500, which means that this station is now below the average and this can leave. Okay, and it's now unloading, which means that this station's going up and loading up to 500. This station now leaves and goes and gets more resources. Right now, both stations are full. This one leaves and goes and gets more resources. And both stations are full. So neither of them are enabled. These trains will wait here until they need to get filled up. So let's say that this one can now fit an entire train. So it drops down to 400. It can now fit a train. So we get a train in. Perfect. We get filled up. And the train leaves. This one drops down too. But let's say that they drop down both at the same time. Let's say that one drops down to 300 and this one drops down to 4. This is how it works. I mean, it's super simple. It just works. So let's now, this dropped down to 300, so this would now be 400. Because remember, in our example, a train holds 100. And this would now be 104. Train leaves. Bye-bye. And it loops back around and gets back into the station. Okay, so both of these trains will be feeding into this station. So next we have, this is going to be 200. Be on your way. We should see this one move, but it's not. I think this train's moving a little bit too quick. Because normally it would have to go to your outpost. I'm going to go ahead and just change it into manual mode. And if we pull it out here, we should see that that train comes into this one. Normally, that example didn't work real good because normally the train would actually have to leave and go to an outpost. But because it was just pathing all the way in a circle, it wasn't quite working. Normally these would not be, like, these would be your train lines. Now, another note that I want to point out here is it is actually very bad practice to use loops. Personally, I don't use them. This is just for an example. So normally you would not have this line here. Instead, you would have another signal that would be here as a chain signal. And you would have your exit back out the back of the station. So you would take it like this, and it would feed back out of the station. And then you would have your chain signal here as well. Okay, so just keep that in mind. I typically don't use loops. I don't like loops. They just cause more problems than they solve. And you would end up with something like this, where the train would. Why can't I see the fuel? Let me grab one of these. The train would just leave back out of the station. So then it would go to iron unload pre. It could leave, come back around, and then come back in. But yeah, you try and avoid loops at all possible. But this is the basics of the system. Next episode in this tutorial series, we'll be covering how to actually tie this in so that you can use it in your outposts as well. And we'll start utilizing some of the numbers that we have, like these train percentages that we ended up with, and utilize those in a more useful way. Okay, so I hope to see you guys then. Thank you all for watching, and have a great night.